We turn our focus now to a significant development in public transportation that promises to bring relief to thousands of commuters in Johannesburg. The Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, PRASA, has recently reopened another crucial line, reconnecting Soweto to the heart of the city. This initiative comes as a beacon of hope for residents who've endured the disruption caused by the suspension of rail services due to rampant infrastructure theft and vandalism during the COVID-19 pandemic. And with the Nancefield to Park Station corridor back in operation, commuters from Soweto can once again access the Johannesburg CBD affordably and conveniently. We are privileged to be joined by Andiswa Makanda, the spokesperson for PRASA, to tell us more on this. Andiswa, welcome and thank you so much for your time. This is such an important development. Could you provide us with an overview of the challenges that you've encountered during the restoration process, and as well as the strategies that you've employed to overcome these challenges?
Good morning, Masechaba. Good morning to your viewers. Thank you for having me. I think for me, this is a huge milestone and a big achievement for PRASA, recovering 31 of the 40 corridors that we operate. We're running trains on these 31 lines, and I think it hasn't been an easy journey recovering the infrastructure. Remember that it was the electrical wires that were either vandalized or stolen. It was the tracks where the trains move on that were also vandalized or stolen. We had substations where we get the source of electricity to power the lines. They were vandalized, and the stations, with the ones that people use to access the trains, were also vandalized. We can say that there was a complete decimation of the passenger rail infrastructure. And so we had to look at it from how do we return the services that are crucially needed in the country, because one, we couldn't do that all the lines across the country at the same time. And so the strategy that was adopted was, one, to say that we're going to have to do it corridor by corridor. We're going to have to phase in because, in some instances, there was a huge demand from our side, and so you'd find that in the market and even the suppliers, they couldn't keep up with the demand of the materials that we needed to recover the infrastructure. Weather conditions were also posing a challenge in terms of the delays. But in the end, Masechaba, we're here now, 31 corridors that have been reopened. We had to relook at our supply chain management. How do we prioritize the corridors that we need to bring back? And so we looked at also which ones are the easiest to fix and return with the high passenger volumes, and that's how we started. And I remember Mabubane and Johannesburg were one of the lines that we reopened around 2021, 2022. And so gradually we started bringing back all the lines. And another challenge is that some of the lines we interface with Transnet, so there were constant engagements with Transnet in terms of fixing the infrastructure and bringing back those train services. But we're here now, 31 corridors out of the 40. We're moving people across the country. We're almost getting to the target of 80% by the end of April.
Andiswa, why has it taken so long? Because, you've been down for quite some time.
As I indicated, remember it was electrical wires that were vandalized across the country. It was the pairway. It was the rail tracks. It was the substations. It was the stations themselves. It was a rebuilding, a construction project that had to, when you're building a house, you need to start with your foundation before you can do your roofing and windows and all of that. It's similar with the railways in that you have to start with your OHTE. Once you've completed that, then another team comes in to fix your tracks. Substations are also done. Then we need to power. You need to do a lot of testing. At the same time, as I indicated, there were weather conditions. There were issues also on the ground. The teams had issues also of work stoppages where projects will be stopped because of communities were unhappy about not being part of the rebuilding project. And so we had to constantly negotiate and educate communities how we onboard and empower communities, and that we cannot appoint everyone in the community, but a select few. So there were those issues where a project would have to be suspended because we needed to go back and engage with communities about how we roll out the projects. Weather conditions also contributed to some of the delays, but we are here now. It's 31 corridors out of the 40.
Yeah, that is fantastic, Andiswa. So how do you intend on safeguarding this renewed infrastructure, especially in light of the fact that, as you've indicated, some of the challenges that you encountered were issues of vandalism? What is the plan moving forward?
I think one must also bring the context that we had security contracts that were cancelled by the previous board because of irregularities that had been picked up. And so there was the cancellation of the security contracts with no contingency plan. And so the infrastructure was left vulnerable to criminality, theft and vandalism. And subsequent to that, there was the hard lockdown where people were not going to work, so trains were not moving because there were no people to necessarily transport to work. And so that escalated the theft and vandalism of the infrastructure. And so what we have done as PRASA is to ensure that we never go back to a situation where we do not have boots on the ground, security guarding the rail infrastructure and the stations. We have an integrated security plan. We're working with the South African Police Services. We're working with other law enforcement agencies in terms of the safeguarding of the infrastructure. We've increased security at our stations. We've got security inside our trains. We are also working with private security companies to augment our own internal security personnel, because we're talking about more than 2,000 kilometers of rail network that needs to be safeguarded. And so we've had to intensify and increase security personnel on the ground to safeguard the infrastructure that is remaining and the infrastructure that we have recovered and brought back. And importantly, we want to also bring in technologies, even in our depots where our trains are kept. We're bringing in technologies, including a seismic walling technology, CCTV cameras. So there's a lot of that we have to do in terms of security. We're doing quite a lot. It's an integrated approach working with law enforcement agencies.
Talk to me about your pricing strategy and its potential impact.
Pricing strategy in terms of the ticketing.
I think R7.50 at that price, literally almost anyone can afford to travel.
No, definitely. I think in terms of our pricing, we look at the distance through the kilometers that one would have to travel to get to their destination. So you'll find Naledi and Nancefield to Joburg will be R7.50, whereas, for instance, Kempton Park or Germiston to Johannesburg would be slightly higher because of the kilometers of rail. And this is quite an affordable price, because people are talking about having to spend more than R1,000 on transport per month. And here with the passenger rail services coming back, people are making huge savings. They're talking about having to spend less than R400 a month just on traveling. And I think part of the issues that the ticketing and how we price the services is quite regulated. We can't just change the pricing is, and when we need to go through a consultation process, we need to go through our shareholder, the Department of Transport as well. It's a regulated space where we cannot wake up and say we want to change the prices. And so, but our priority now is to just return the services, make sure that people use trains as an alternative mode of transport.
Andiswa, looking ahead, what are PRASA's future plans for the continued improvement and expansion of rail services in South Africa?
Definitely. I mean, the 31 lines that we've brought back, they are partially operating. And what I mean about partially operating, number one is that we need to restore signaling that was also vandalized. And signaling is what controls the movement of the trains. We need to bring back the automation of those signaling so that we can run trains more frequently. Currently, we're running a train, for instance, one train in an hour or one train in every 30 minutes. We want to increase the frequency so that trains are moving every 10, 15 minutes, but we need the signaling for that so that trains can move safely on our infrastructure. Secondly, we've got around 463 stations nationally. Today, we've recovered refurbished to basic functionality 263 of these stations. So there's another 200 stations remaining that we need to work on and refurbish and rehabilitate. We also need to look at the perway, the railway tracks. In some of the lines and corridors, the railway tracks need to be replaced. We are seeing that the trains are running at a reduced speed because of the condition of the railway tracks. So there's work starting there in terms of replacing the railway tracks, making sure that it's even, that we can even increase the speed of the movement of the new trains. We also want to do walling in terms, because PRASA, our infrastructure, our rail network is an open network, which is one of the issues that poses risks for us, because we run trains in communities. These new trains that we are running, you find that they become vulnerable to stone throwing, where young children or anyone in the community throw stones at these new trains. So we want to look at issues of walling some of the corridors, especially the high-risk areas.
Which also speaks to the safety of commuters, which we think is absolutely fantastic. You're doing a wonderful job. Andiswa Makanda is the spokesperson of PRASA. Thank you so much for your time.